Hey, please, those who just arrived, grab a seat. A couple up front here as well. Good afternoon or evening. Welcome to the launch of Pathway to the Stars, 100 years of the Royal Canadian Air Force. My name is Jeremy Diamond, and I'm founding CEO of the RCAF Foundation. Our mission at the Foundation is to recognize, foster, and celebrate the RCAF through community engagement, education programs, and commemorative activities. Our purpose is to simply inspire Canadians, particularly young people, to learn about and support this important national institution and highlight the future of Canadian aviation, ensuring its dynamic growth and expansion. Today we will hear from one of our authors, Mike Hood, a special guest, Brett Parker, about the past, present, and future of the RCAF, and give you all a chance to purchase the book following. I want to thank our generous sponsor, OpenText, and the Hangar Flight Museum for offering us this beautiful space. Thank you so much. I want to welcome Brian Desjardins, the Executive Director of the Hangar Flight Museum, to come up and say a few words of welcome.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hangar Flight Museum here in Calgary, Alberta, and with altitude, and as of last year, the home of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. I welcome you on behalf of the Board of Directors and staff. We're honored to host this exciting event, the RCAF 100th Anniversary Pathway to the Stars book launch. As you know, we celebrate and protect aviation history at our museum by stewarding over 30 aircraft and 50,000 artifacts. Many of the aircraft you find here at the museum have served in some capacity with the Royal Canadian Air Force. The building that we sit in today, that the Hangar Flight Museum calls home, is a historic building. It's very much an artifact in itself. It was originally built in 1941 as part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, the drill hall for the number 37 Service Flight Training School. This hangar was also the home of Royal Canadian Air Force 403, the Calgary Squadron, formed in 1948. Ultimately, we are storytellers to the many exhibits and displays we have that also speak to those who have served in the Air Force, military. May I finish by boldly saying that the Hangar Flight Museum has set out its own pathway to this as we celebrate our 48th. Okay. May I again finish by boldly saying that that has been restored at the Bomber Command Museum in Nanton, and our CF-100 Canuck fighter jet being restored in Wetaskiwin. As well, we'll improve the visitor experience with building accessibility improvements, including new walkways, gateway system, and new storefront with automated doors. And please come to our Remembrance Day service on November 11th, lest we forget. As we say here at the hangar, we continue to reach higher altitude with your support. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate you having us here. When I was here a couple of months ago, we had a great conversation about what it would be like to have an event here and host, and having the hurricane behind us and doing all that. It was a wonderful year, and thank you for all your support and your team's support. It's now my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator. Kendra Kincade is founder and president and CEO of Elevate Aviation, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to uniting and empowering women in aviation. In addition to founding Elevate, Kendra is an air traffic controller, a profession where she found her passion supporting women in aviation. Additionally, Kendra is a board member for the Alberta Aviation Council, vice chair of the Strategic Aviation Advisory Council, and we count her as one of our members of our RCAF Foundation Advisory Council. Kendra is also the honorary colonel of 417 Combat Support Squadron at Four Wing in Cold Lake. That's a lot. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kendra Kincade.
Hi. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here and taking your time to come out. We only have a very short time for this, about 12 minutes for a little Q&A here, so I'm going to jump right in and ask my up and join me, please. Michael Hood, look at this. Woohoo! Look at this book. So the first question I have, just flip it up. There you go. The first question I have is, did you design this?
No.
I was wondering who picked the cover. It's beautiful.
We had great partners at U of T Press, and they know what kind of sells. So, we chose all the pictures inside. They designed the cover and chose the F-18 on the outside, which is actually kind of funny because it's a bit dirty. It looks like it's been in combat. So maybe that's a fantastic picture.
Yeah, I think it's a great picture. If you haven't got your book yet, please go over there to buy a book after. Okay, so I have a few questions. My first question is, why you? What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I was having a discussion even earlier here today. I don't know if we do a really good job in our country telling stories. There seem to be so many stories that haven't been told. And while I was commander of the Air Force, I lamented that the official history of the Royal Canadian Air Force ended in 1945. So there had been nothing written officially on the Air Force post-war, which is in the process of being fixed. And we wanted some books that focused on people instead of just airplanes. Airplanes are fascinating, but the Air Force is made up of incredible men and women who have done such amazing things. So as we came to the foundation and we were thinking of events we could do to support the Air Force centennial, which I think is an incredibly important milestone for our country and for the Royal Canadian Air Force, we came up idea with the book, 100 Stories for 100 Years. It's a coffee table book. You could pick it up on any page and have a quick read of an interesting story. We've tried to, my biggest fear was maybe missing an important part, but lots of hands and eyes have been on it. So it's first and foremost a fundraiser for the RCF Foundation, which is very close to my heart, but also to really kick off the RCF Centennial, which I know you're going to have an amazing event here in March, just before the 100th, and hopefully many, many more of these across the country.
Well, and it is really good. I love the short stories in it. I really do. I've already read some of it, and I've tested some of my coworkers. So I have an air traffic controller, and I tested them on a few things, and one of them was asking them what province was the first aircraft flown in Canada. How many of you know? Look, there's only, when you read the book, you'll know. I'm not going to tell you the answer. You have to read the book to find out. Suspense. Okay, so tell me, what is your favorite story? Do you have one favorite story to pick?
I have a lot of favorite stories, but there's one that I find very, very Canadian. And it kind of pains me a bit because I'm from Montreal, so there's a hockey element to this. And
Go Oilers.
So in 1939, 1940, the top three scorers of the National Hockey League were with the Boston Bruins. And they formed what was first called the sauerkraut line, because they were all from German families in Kitchener-Waterloo, which is a lot of German descendants. That became the famous Kraut line. They won a couple of Stanley Cups early in the 40s, but all three of them enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force on the same day. And the night before they went off, they played in the Boston Gardens against the Montreal Canadiens. And Boston won 8-1. But the remarkable thing, at the end of the game, the Montreal Canadiens players picked all three of them up on their shoulders and skated them around the ice in a farewell while the whole Boston Garden sang Auld Lang Syne. And they went off to Montreal the next day, were inducted, and all three were in Europe within 3 months of that. All three would come back after the war and continue their hockey careers, but that's kind of just a real Canadian story that kind of touched my heart.
Oh, that is such a good story. What story, when you were going through this, you must have, I'm guessing you learned a little bit along the way while you were creating this book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what story most surprised you?
Well, I'll be honest, there was because you don't know every aspect of the history of the Royal Canadian Air Force, but one, for instance, there's a story about Alan Bundy. Alan Bundy was a black Canadian who wanted to be a pilot and could not, because pilots, you had to be white up until 1942. But he went through training when they had changed the rules, and Canada was actually a leader ahead of the RAF and others in assimilating everyone into the force. And he became a bullfighter pilot. But when he showed up at his first squadron, bullfighter has a pilot and a navigator. It's very similar missions to the Mosquito, very similar twin engine. They couldn't get anyone to fly with him. That was solved. A sergeant, I forget his name, volunteered to fly, and they flew together for the rest of the war, 42 missions, and he became the first black Air Force pilot to fly a combat mission. So I didn't know that part of our history. But every story in there deserves to be in there. There are a lot of firsts that are in there. A great story about Karen McCrimmon, who was the first navigator. She went on to be first female CEO of a squadron in any of the air forces in the Commonwealth, and then went on to be an MP in Ottawa and is now an MPP. I just saw her last week at our event. But they're great stories about firsts. That Canada was a real leader, and the first female fighter pilots, because we're going to have a fighter pilot up here in a second, in the Western world were Canadians. So there's this amazing treasure trove of stories that kind of make you feel really good about being Canadian and being part of the Royal Canadian Air Force that I didn't know them all. So nice surprises.
Yeah, it's been really great. Like I said, I started to read it and I'm like, wow, this is so fascinating. And I just love it. So I'm going to keep reading it and keep testing my.
There'll be a quiz later on it.
Yeah. I'm going to create a quiz just for people to try to work on. So, I am the founder of Elevate. And so we are trying to get a lot of women into aviation, into the RCAF. And you do touch on that here. And you talk about these women, back when the women's division was formed. Can you tell me a little bit about that? That's incredible.
No, absolutely.
The story of her sitting in the car when she's eating in the mess dinner and they couldn't go into the mess dinner.
That's right. So many people wouldn't know the size and the importance of the RCF women's division, and as it was known. And it's really funny because the ranks are a little bit different, but the book has a great story. But it also has Elsie McGee, the Queen of the Hurricanes. We chose that story 3 years ago, long before we knew it would be, the face of a loony. And it's an incredible story. The first female aerospace engineer in the country who goes on to play a critical role in the construction of these aircraft. I encourage you, if you don't know the story, to come up and read it. Incredible woman. And that story is in there as well.
So we are almost at, look at this. I love the helicopter.
Yeah, that was actually during the floods and the landslides in BC.
eh?
Yeah, so the story, I think it's 349 people and a dog they rescued from the highway there. There you go.
Look that, if they knew.
Bedeck, Nova Scotia.
Now they know the answer to where their first airplane flew.
So the great thing about the book, though, is really the pictures. And we went through so many pictures, but it's great you find them, but then you have to get permission to use them, which was the better part of the last year, believe it or not, was to get permission to use all these pictures. We're really proud. This is one of my favorite ones. That's a squadron on the wing. That's in the Aleutian Islands, another area that people may not realize that Canadian Air Force fought in the Aleutians against the Japanese. That's the RCF Flyers in 1948, another great story. So, and we could talk forever.
Yeah, we could actually, yeah. And I just made a documentary, and frame by frame, we have to get everything approved. So I can't imagine the number of pictures you have. I can't imagine what that has gone through. So wrapping up a little bit here, tell me what impact you want this book to have. You must have put a lot of work into this book. What impact do you want it to have?
Well, a lot of people put a lot of work into it. I'm just one of the two names on the cover. I know there's a number of ex-military people, serving military people. I kind of bumped into an Air Force career, and it, on reflection now, because I've been retired 5 years, it was remarkable. I owe everything to our Air Force. The man I became, the father and husband I became, are, as a result, my closest friends to this day are people that I met in the Air Force, and so it's such an important part of my life that I feel like I'm giving back, co-founding the foundation and doing this, and I just want next year, the 100th anniversary, to be a real special one for the Air Force.
Oh, this book is going to make it even more special. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the effort that you put into this book. And please, everyone.
Thanks to everyone for coming out. Really appreciate the support. Thank you.
Big hand, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Kendra, for that start of our first conversation. Before we invite our next special guest up here on the stage, I wanted to let you know that the Foundation is proud to screen these 3 short videos that highlight 3 of the stories from this book. There's 100 stories. We have 97 videos to go, but these are the first 3 that we wanted to screen right now. So go ahead.
Shortly after the Second World War began, Alan Bundy tried to enlist in the Royal Canadian Air Force, following his father and grandfather's military service in the First World War. At the time, the RCAF prevented the enlistment of Black Canadians as pilots or air crew. Once these discriminatory policies were removed in 1942, Bundy did enlist. After pilot training, he was stationed with 404 Squadron. Though an excellent pilot, no one would fly with him because of the color of his skin until Sergeant Elwood Wright stepped up to be his navigator. Bundy and Wright would go on to fly 42 successful operations, defending the coastline against German U-boats. At a time of widespread racial prejudice, Flying Officer Alan Bundy challenged the barriers facing him, to become the first Black Canadian to fly a combat mission in the RCAF. In the fall of 1990, Canada entered the First Gulf War. The Canadian Armed Forces' participation in the military efforts there would be codenamed Operation Friction, the first time the Canadian Armed Forces had gone to war in 40 years. This included 24 CF-18 Hornets, nicknamed the Desert Cats. The Desert Cats flew combat air patrol missions over the Persian Gulf 12 to 24 hours a day with the assistance of refueling aircraft, and later, sweep and escort missions and aerial bombardment. With the hard-working ground crews keeping the jets ready to fly, the Desert Cats showcased the high standards of the RCAF and completed their missions with no accidents or fatalities. The silver, sleek F-86 Sabre lanced through the air at supersonic speeds as the RCAF's frontline fighter in the early days of the Cold War. When the RCAF commissioned the plane, Canadair rebuilt the Sabre under license. It added larger wings for improved maneuverability and an Arenda turbojet engine. It was the Canadian version, the Mark VI, that would be considered the best Sabre ever built. Throughout the 1950s, Canadair produced more than 1,800 Sabres. Most of these were used by the squadron's 1 Canadian Air Division in Europe. Europe was in awe of the Sabre, not only because of the design, but also because of how well the Canadian pilots flew them.
Those are the first 3 videos of 100 that we're going to be planning on doing on this book. And it's a good opportunity for us to tell more of the story. Mike told a little bit more of the story than you'll get from the few hundred words in the book. Videos, and we're going to listen to a trailer for some podcasts that we have out a little bit later on in the program. Another opportunity to tell more of the story than just from this book. See it as really a jumping off point to tell the rest of the story. Kendra, we'll throw it back to you to do an introduction of our next guest.
Start us off, we're going to watch one more video. I do. Okay, well, without further ado, please welcome Brett Parker. Come on up. Woohoo! I really do want to be a snowbird pilot. Not a pilot. I'm air traffic controller, so I'll sit behind the screen.
This is on.
Okay, hi, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me. This is great.
Oh, this is awesome. That was cool, the video. So tell me, the first thing I want to know, let's just start with, tell us the relevance between the Snowbirds and the RCAF.
Well, the Snowbirds have obviously been around since 1971. We just celebrated our 52nd year.
Wait, I was born in 71 and I'm 35. How does that work?
I keep saying I'm 29, but anyway. Obviously, the Snowbirds have always been around for over 50 years. We pride ourselves on being able to demonstrate the skill, professionalism, and teamwork of the Canadian Armed Forces and act as ambassadors of Canada. And in terms of how that relates to what we are, we feel like we're obviously a part of the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCAF, but also that other aspect of which is the Canadian aspect. And it really showed this for sure over this past summer, going to all the places that we went to, and you see the smiles on people's faces, all the Canadians that are so happy to see us there, and it really just makes you so proud to be able to do this job.
Okay, but do you have to be a little bit crazy?
Well, I know there's, looking for a story. I guess I could probably say, sir, well, because I was inverted and then ... I'm just kidding.
Wow. Okay, so again, in the book, it talks about the snowbirds, and it talks about how close you get, like 4 feet. Like, what does that feel like? Like, how do you get there? What makes you want to do this? Like, that's pretty risky.
Yeah, but the thing is as I tell, everybody that I get a chance to see, is that you are fortunate to be able to see the final product of, 8 months of hard work. And it's not just the pilots, right? It's the technicians, it's the entire squadron that's worked incredibly hard to put together that show and that performance. So you get to see the end result of that, but we don't start there. We started obviously at wider formations, and as the proficiency grows, that's how we get tighter. And to be honest, it seems maybe counterintuitive, but actually the tighter you fly, the easier it is, because you pick up on your errors and your references a little bit quicker, and so you can actually fix it, and believe it or not. But even as a boss, I've had the fortunate pleasure of leading the team over the last 2 years. And the closer the formation is, actually some of the profiles are easier as well. So it kind of works in both that way in terms of, obviously safety is always paramount, for sure. We won't move closer until everybody's ready to do that. But as part of, that skill piece that we are, proud of, as part of, even as the video showed, our ability to bring that formation tighter. And, we benefit from the accolades, having just finished this past season. And I don't know how many people are just, I love your guys' show. It's so fantastic, and it's tight, and call it the ballet in the sky. It's a different show, and that's what makes it that much more Canadian. So what's your role over the last 2 years? Like, are you up there flying with them when you're training? Or how does that work? So I was the team lead, so I was the one at the front. Actually, that video was actually a piecemeal one that our really skilled public affairs officer, Captain Gabe Ferris, put that together. So actually, the shots from the 7 jet was actually me in 2021. But so the past 2 years, I've been we'll call it the boss or the team lead. So I was out the front there leading all the profiles. So are you just constantly talking to them though in the back? Like, are you like, okay, tighter people? Like, I'd probably give them a headache if I was just talking all the time. But no, there's obviously there's quite a bit of talking on the radio. It's not only me. We part of the aspect of the show that we try and put together is to try and keep. I always talk about a movie, right? What makes a movie entertaining? You could, the movies have gotten longer and longer, and you go and say, but if you're entertained, 2 hours goes by like that. Not to say we could fly for 2 hours because we ran out of gas well before that. But if people are entertained, that timing will go by so quickly. The benefit is when we have 9 aircraft out there, we can mix and match, and our playbook is over 150 different formations, and allows us to keep that pacing going and keep people wondering what's next. And of course, we've got incredibly talented narrators that are on there, getting the music going, and of course, that's also part of that connect as well. For me, wanting to be a snowbird, and I went to air shows as a kid. I always talked about, people made fun of me when I said, "Welcome to your snowbird experience." That word "experience," because I find everyone has a different experience with our show, which is great. Maybe it might be music, it might be obviously the airplanes. There seems to be something there that. For me, it was pretty much everything, and that's why usually my introduction was, welcome to your 2023 Snowbird experience, running in whatever show we're going to do. And then that's the whole part that I hope people took away from the show. And the Canadian Snowbirds were the first ones to ever perform to music, is that right? I believe so, yeah. And again, it's just one of those opportunities that music it's culture, it's everything, and the ability to go to Nova Scotia or PEI and pick a couple of local artists from there and have that in a snowbird show it's hugely impactful on the community when you can show that kind of, that respect and connect with people. And music does that for us. And I'm always enjoyed the music. Obviously, there's a huge playbook of music that's gone into the Snowbird show. There's been, I think Bob Wade is here. He probably listened to a few of the old Snowbird video music from before. But we also try and, music does change, and trying to continue, because music is a way to connect with people.
So how do you get chosen to be a snowbird? Like, are there hundreds of people that apply, or are there just a few people that are dared to do it?
I wouldn't say it to be dare to do it. It seems a bit over the top, but we do have a selection process. As I tell everybody, be it either in the military or not, the first door to step through to want to be a snowbird is to actually want to be a snowbird. I mean, that drive, that motivation, that replicates itself just even becoming, joining the RCAF and being a navigator, pilot. Pick one of the occupations, it's all about having that drive and be motivated to it. So that's the first step, is actually wanting to do the job. And then, we've got a tryout process that's been, it's changed over the course of the years. But ultimately, we're trying to find the right people with the right attitude. And honestly, the large portion of the job is all about attitude. And come in and feel like you're going to be impactful on what the team wants to do, and ultimately what the RCF and the CF is trying to utilize the team to do, which is to get out there, be that high-profile recruiting tool to encourage people to hopefully want to, join the military and find that next career.
And do you get a lot, like when you land and you go out and you're walking through the crowd, you can spot you, a little ways away, I think?
Bit of a sore thumb, I suppose. Yeah.
Do you have a lot of people that actually come up and are inspired, do you think, to be in the military?
I think so. Yeah, I really do. We go and do autographs, and we pretty much we will stay there until the last person gets their autograph. We're always probably the last people to leave. Half the time we'd be on our way out, and it'd be more the food vendor. I got some extra food if you guys want some food. I know it's tough to kind of watch the waistline. Thanks for noticing. But anyways, it's part of the. I can't say that we would inspire everybody to do that. Ultimately, when I would go do a school visit, I wouldn't say I'm all about joining the military. If anything, it would be more about finding that passion that gives you that drive to want to do something with your life. If it happens to involve the military, fantastic, and it'd be great to have join and find that job and that career that drives you. And of course, it's just like anything else at school, right? The more you enjoy it, probably the better you're going to do at it, right? You're just driven to do that. And of course, I'm sure within your field as well, you would see that. So do I actually know the numbers? No, I don't. But I mean, I was inspired as a kid by air shows and going to air shows. And, I grew up, basically wanting to be a snowbird. I had all the posters in my room, and I dragged my parents to shows. And so I figure, if nothing else, the whole payback is, I'd like to feel like maybe I'm hopefully inspiring somebody to maybe want to do it as well.
That was going to be my next question about what inspired you. So it was air show. So your parents weren't in the military.
No.
Did you know anyone in the military?
A few, but not really a lot of military affiliation, no, within the family. My grandfather was in, but not in a way, if you will. So I was actually, I was inspired by air shows, by movies. I mean, I was inspired by the original Top Gun.
I was going to say Top Gun.
Yeah, Top Gun. But believe it or not, I mean, it's funny that like Bob Wade is here, and one of the shows that that came out, and I don't know if he remembers being a part of it. It was called Those Daring Young Men by ITV Global, and I still have that on a VHS tape at home, and I used to watch that all the time. He was a fighter pilot, and he was in that, and one of the guys in that show his name was Wally Nemi, and he the way that he conducted himself, the way he spoke about that the confidence, but you also see what the jets can do, and that was all part of it as well. And the other aspect is just like we're doing here is a book. I don't know how many books, picture books, like Larry Milbury books, Canadian Wings, you name it, and that's all part of that feeds into that matrix to, find hopefully that passion, right? And if that's, I'm looking forward to be able to go through this book and add it to my collection. And so when you ask what inspired me, loads of things, I suppose, but I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I've been able to do so far. So.
You can buy a book right over here when you're done.
Which is great, yeah, I know.
He says, sell the book. No. Bob should raise his hand so we know who we're talking about back there. Exactly. There he is. Yeah. Right on. Okay, so I know that there's a lot of moving around in the military. How much time do you have? Do you have a little bit more time? Do you have a couple more years at this?
Oh yeah, I just transferred back to Cold Lake, which is where my family is. So just there. So kind of my last few days in my my first year boss at my rented suit, my super suit. But yeah, upwards and onwards type of thing, and like everything else, everything comes to an end at some point. And I was really happy to be able to hand over, the job to a good friend of mine, Major Brent Handy. He took over as the boss, so he'll be, running the team into RCF 100 for next year, which is going to be incredibly special, and this should be a lot of fun. So, yeah, so that's just hang up the suit and but upwards and onwards. So it's great.
Oh well, you'll hang up the suit, but you'll always be able to say you were a snowbird. So pretty cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Really, really appreciate you coming out and sharing some stories. And I imagine you inspire a lot of people to get into the military. So good for you. Oh. Very good for you. I'll say thank you so much to Brett.
Thank you. Thanks.
On. Thanks, Brett. You can stay up here. You can sit down. Either way, you're done with the formal part, but we have a little bit more to go. I want to thank you both for sharing your personal experiences today. The Snowbirds are such an important part of Canadian history, as we've discussed, and is featured in the book. And Brett will be here after the program to answer any questions you may have, sign a book, take a picture, etc. I'm sure he's used to it. Before we close the formal program, I encourage you to visit the book table. I'm excited to share with you the previews of our new podcast series from the RCAF Foundation called Pathway to the Stars, Tales of Rescue. Each episode draws inspiration from Canadian search and rescue operations spanning the past 100 years. Through masterful storytelling, these podcast series brings to life the dramatic and often heart-wrenching stories of brave individuals who dedicated their lives to saving others. Please enjoy a sneak peek into Pathway to the Stars, Tales of Rescue.
The RCAF Foundation presents Pathway to the Stars, Tales of Rescue. Stories based on actual events from a century of history in the RCAF. Episode 1. Mercy Flight.
Dials are freezing over. As long as the vaccine stays warm. If it freezes, it's done for. Is the coal heater, is it still warm?
Yes. Vaccine's all wrapped in the blanket.
Vic?
It's fine back there.
Vic!
What?
I'm going to need you to move my hand.
Your hand?
My hand. It's frozen in place on the yoke. Ugh! All right. Now, there, look hard. Can you just see the southern shore, right there? That's Lesser Slave Lake. Now, we can't navigate this wall of ice up here, so we're going to have to drop down.
You want to fly low? This isn't the Edmonton Fair, Wop.
Trust me, and hang on.
Episode 2. The Parabels. Okay, there's wreckage down by that clearing. Coming in as low as we can here. Now, jump!
You've got this, Gracie. Arch 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Check 1,000. Chute is open. Oh, God. I feel like I'm falling faster than I did in training. Must be all this extra heavy gear. Whoa! Oh no! My harness! It's slipping! Ah!
Episode 3, Box Top 22. What is the status of the rescue unit helicopters from Gander?
They need to turn around. The conditions are too difficult out east to negotiate.
And the chopper from Goose Bay?
Cancelled. It was taking them too long to get through.
Damn blizzard. Hanson, we need to put together a ground rescue team and have them head out on the Arctic terrain vehicles immediately from alert.
Yes, sir.
Captain de Groot, I think I saw something overhead, just to the west. Yes, it's a plane. A rescue plane.
A plane! Overhead!
Quickly! Grab the flare gun!
Got them more.
Fire them off! Now!
Please let them find us.
Listen to podcasts, know where to find podcasts. It's first episode's out, second one I think is out, and the third one's dropping next week. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Again, another example of how we're trying to tell stories in a different way, different audience, and to feature some of the stories we may not know about the history of the Air Force. I know we tried to pack in a lot. We're going to try and have a short event. You can buy a book and have a bite to eat. I want to thank Brett Parker and Mike Hood and Kendra Kincade for all your participation at today's event. Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful partners here at the Hangar Flight Museum. Brian, I really appreciate you hosting us here. Recognize a few people in the audience. I'm going to forget, but I definitely want to recognize John Melbourne, Honorary Colonel 410 Squadron. John, it was great to meet you today after having a great phone call. I know how important this book and these events are to you and all the things that you've done in the history of the Air Force. Thank you to our advisory council members, Kendra Kincade, of course, and Graham McLaughlin. Where's Graham? Graham, stand up and take a bow. Thank you so much, Graham, for all your help planning this event. I know you have a lot of friends in this room, and I really appreciate more to come. A lot of plans to hatch into 2024 together. And finally, a big thank you to our sponsors, OpenText, Blue Elephant, our event producer, and my colleague, Jen Blake. Can't do any of this without you. Mike and Brett and Kendra and others related to RCAF history will be at the table signing, but Mike, as one of the authors, will sign books. They're available for sale there. Of course, there's still food and drink there as well, so stick around as long as you want, and thanks for everybody for coming. Appreciate it.